Okay. Let me just... Assalamu alaikum, everyone. We're just gonna wait just a few minutes for everyone to start, joining. Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Yasmin Alian. I am the advancement coordinator at Bayan. Thank you all for joining today's webinar, Latino Muslim Students in Conversation, Why Hispanic Heritage is Islamic Heritage, Part 2. I want to take a moment to go ahead and thank our sponsors for tonight's webinar. They are the reason that we're able to put this all together. The New Jersey and Maryland Roll Star Academy, the 3 Puerto Rican Imams, Imana Mutual Funds Trust, whyislam.org, and Ohala Foundation. And to learn more about Bayan, please go to bayanonline.org. And just so we can kick off, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists for tonight. So we have Hazel Gomez, board chair of Rabata, the organizer of Dream of Detroit, and she's a band student and getting her MDiv in Islamic chaplaincy. And then we have Nahela Morales. She is the co-founder of Embrace. She is a public speaker and activist, and she is a band student getting her MDiv in Islamic chaplaincy. And then we have Cesar Dominguez, student services at Bayan. He's the imam and teacher of LALMA, Los Angeles Latino Muslim Association, and a band student getting his Doctor of Ministry in Islamic Leadership. And then we have our moderator of the evening, Wendy Diaz. She is the Spanish department lead of Why Islam, writer, poet, and published author, and she is a band student getting her MA in Islamic Studies. And I'm going to pass it off to her.
Assalamu alaikum. Que la paz sea con todos ustedes. May peace and blessings be upon all of you. And welcome to this part 2 of Latino Muslim Students in Conversation, Why Hispanic Heritage is also Islamic Heritage. Today, we're going to be continuing the conversation that we began back in September. And that conversation started during Hispanic Heritage Month. We didn't complete the conversation at that time, and I think that it was for the best. Why? Because we want to talk about Hispanic heritage, not just during Hispanic Heritage Month, but we also want to talk about it all year round, right? Because Latino Muslims, Hispanic Muslims are part of the Ummah, part of the Islamic community, and so we are an integral part of our Islamic centers, our institutions, and even here at Bayan Islamic Graduate School, where we have 7% of our student body that are Latinos. And so I am proud to be one of those students, along with my fellow panelists, whom I want to give a warm welcome and say Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to each and every one of you. Thank you so much for being here with me today to continue our conversation.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So before we start, I wanted to take a minute again to thank our generous sponsors who made the webinar possible: Why Islam, Ohala Foundation, the 3 Puerto Rican Imams, and Roll Star Jiu-Jitsu Academy, and also the AMC. Be sure to follow them on social media and support their efforts, as well as those of Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Today is Giving Tuesday, so if you feel generous, please make sure to donate to Bayan Islamic Graduate School, who is making these type of programs possible and also helping to educate this new generation of leaders here in the US to carry the standard of knowledge and leadership to their communities and to give back. And now I wanted to ask everyone on the panel this one question, because aside from acknowledging the shared history between Latinos and Muslims, we also want to reflect on the contributions that Latino Muslims have had, even in present day, right, and in our Islamic communities. And our panelists are also testament to that involvement, right? Each of us here are involved in some kind of way in our communities. And so I want to highlight that. So I want to start by asking everyone, and I'll start with Nahela because she's right here beside me. I want to ask, how long have you been Muslim? And also, how have you been involved in the Muslim community over the years? And then after Nahela, you can go ahead and pass the baton on to the next panelist.
So the story is lengthy and long. Whenever I'm asked this question, I'm hesitant because the journey began with 9/11. That doesn't necessarily mean that I took Shahada with 9/11, but that's when the journey began. And so it took several years before I embarked on this beautiful journey of Islam. All I remember is that my son was approximately 1 to 3, around that age, because I started practicing prior to converting. So I started going to the masjid, I would go to Jummah, and everybody assumed that I was Muslim at the masjid. He's now 19. So if we do the math, we're going almost on 2 decades of this beautiful journey. And I feel that throughout these almost 20 years of being in community, I've seen a wave of changes, and I've seen a wave of contributions, and we see it every single day with our Hispanic, Latino Muslims who are now teachers and professors, and mashallah, they're contributing on an everyday basis, whether it's teaching Quran, teaching online, and what have you. And these are individuals who once upon a time I used to sit in class with to just learn our basics, right? The basics of our faith. And so it's wonderful to see the contributions just spreading out throughout the country. It's not even necessarily only here in Jersey. It's throughout the entire country that we see the growth, and we also see individuals always aspiring, but also doing the work. So we are talking the talk and walking the walk in all walks of this beautiful path. And we're talking about humanitarian work, we're talking about historians, we're talking about activists, and we just see everybody on the front line. And so we have been contributing for many, many years, and this is even before my time, right? We go back to the 70s in Harlem. So if we think about how much we have contributed, and this is what we know, what we don't know, we don't know. And so inshallah, one day we will have a full history of how much Latinos have contributed in this country. But for now, I think I'm just very appreciative of all the brothers and sisters that have paved the way for someone like myself.
Inshallah. And you pointed something out. You said all over the country. So when you're telling your, how long you've been Muslim and your involvement, can you tell us where you're from or where you are right now, so that you can give our audience an idea? Like, we are worldwide. Yes, we are also nationwide. So
yeah, so I was born in Mexico City, and I was raised in California. Took my Shahada in New York or New Jersey. Lived in Texas for almost 10 years, and now I'm back in New Jersey. So I've been all around the country.
right. Who do you want to pass the baton to?
So let's go, Cesar.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Que la paz y la misericordia de Dios estén con todos nosotros. May the peace and mercy of God be with each one of us. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here again. I can't believe it's been 3 months since December that we gathered together for this first beautiful question again, so I don't go off the path of our engagement.
So how long have you been Muslim? And what has been your involvement in the Muslim community since then?
Thank you. Yes. Well, my first encounter with Islam took place 20 years ago in 2004 in Cairo, in Egypt, and I embraced Islam. I pronounced my Shahada, my declaration of faith, 1 year later in Mexico City. So it's almost 1 year, 20 years that I began the path of Islam. Uh, since then, I was at the time I was born. I'm actually like a little bit the opposite of Naela. I was born in California, in San Diego, but most of my life I've been in Mexico, in Mexico City, and in Baja California. My parents never emigrated to the United States, and I have lived in Mexico most of my life. But when I took my Shahada, which was in Mexico City, actually I took it twice. Once in Mexico City in 2005, and then a few months later I returned to Cairo, and I did it again there, just to be certain that I was ready for the evolution. And then I returned after that. I returned to Mexico City, and just for family matters, I ended up in Los Angeles. I began to study Islam there with the Los Angeles Latino Muslim Association at the Islamic Center of Southern California, and I began to experience a different way to live religion. Prior to Islam, I was a practicing Catholic. I went to church at least twice a week. But the practice, the heart of my belief and my practice as a Catholic was very private. I did not engage. I don't recall myself engaging in a lot of activities in the church or with other Catholic groups. But when I embraced Islam and I began attending classes in California, in Los Angeles, my life as a Muslim became very public. And I found myself being the voice and image of Islam for many people, for members of my family, for my friends, for other communities that I engage with at the time. So I've been active in Southern California with several Muslim communities in the north of Mexico, in Mexico City, and also I've been very active in interfaith work, and I believe that the interfaith work has been central to my Muslim identity, if I may say so, because I do believe that I embrace Islam as a result of my interest to learn about other cultures, other religions, other ways to worship God, and other ways to feel close to Him. So that thirst could not cease once I embrace Islam. Once I embrace another way to pray, another way to feel the proximity of God. So I'm very much engaged in interfaith work, and that's central to my Muslim Islamic identity. If I speak too much, please stop me.
No, not at all. That's amazing. Never thought of it that way. So you want to go ahead and pass it over to Hazel?
Hazel, yes, of course. Please, lead us.
Mashallah. Estoy muy agradecida a oír la historia de ustedes dos. I'm incredibly grateful to hear the stories of Naila and Cesar, and I know we could be here for hours with all of our stories and Wendy's story también. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قال ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. You know, subhanAllah, as Naila mentioned, I think, you know, sharing my story, right, there's so many details and could take so long. To answer your question, Wendy, I've been Muslim since 2003. I was a senior in high school, and so that's what, 21 and a half years or so, subhanAllah. I've been Muslim longer than I was not. Being a senior in high school, I was 18, subhanAllah. But my journey really started when I was 13. Looking for another faith started when I was 13. Looking into Islam started when I was 16. And I say that because these are really formative years for everyone, right? And it was actually a poem by a Puerto Rican Jewish woman that showed me I don't have to stay Catholic. And this is, you know, no offense or disrespect to anyone who is Catholic who watches this, but it is often within our culture that si eres Latino, if you're Latino, you're Catholic, right? Like that's often what is the assumption. And I have a tia who's also not Catholic. She's a Christian denomination, so she's always my ally. Cuando voy para Mexico, she's always like, I understand I'm not, you know, I'm not Catholic either. But I share that in because these formative years are ones in which often many people are searching for God. And so my experience was I was really trying to find who is God. I was very angry at God as a child with so many things that happened in my life that I've shared with people and others that I have not. I always had, you know, this feeling of why me, God? And there was a moment, subhanAllah, I remember this. I was crying one day and my grandmother hugged me. I must have been like 10. And subhanAllah, she hugged me and she said, God wouldn't give you more than you can handle. You got this, Palonguita. It's my family nickname. She's like, you got this, Palonguita. You know, vamos a estar bien. And it was really then that it was like, I know God's there. I know he's there. And so fast forward 8 years later, 6 years of like, you know, really at 16, like I said, but 8 years, I was a senior in high school. I went to this program led by 2 convert scholars, mashallah. And it was about the 99 names of Allah. And it was really at that conference that I was like, oh, I finally, like, I feel like I finally know who is our creator, who is God, like this ultimate being. And subhanAllah, to learn it from converts as well, just had a different outtake because it's almost like they understood, you know, like what I was going through, even though this massive conference. And so, you know, that's just a bit of like my own story. And when it comes to contributions of Latino Muslims, I really want to uplift someone, one of our dear ancestors, Khadija Rivera. You know, I mentioned her, subhanAllah, I never got a chance to meet her. When I converted, everybody was like, ¿Tú conoces Khadija Rivera? Do you know Khadija Rivera? You're Puerto Rican and Mexican. You're Puerto Rican. You have to know her, right? It was this like, everybody wanted me to connect with her. And unfortunately, I never had the chance to meet her. And I want to uplift her story because, you know, Wendy, you said, what are contributions, right? Like here is a woman who was Puerto Rican, a Puerto Rican Ecuadorian convert from the early 80s, you know, who really just embodied this important reminder for each of us that through Allah, anything is possible. And she founded this organization called Piedad. And that was really, I loved that, you know, the acronym Piedad, you know, because it means piety when you translate it. You know, it means taqwa, it means God consciousness, piety. But, you know, the acronym was Propagación Islámica para la Educación de Devoción de Allah el Divino. Like the propagation of Islam for the education of the devotion of God the divine. Like, oh my gosh, that's just poetry in and of itself. And so there are people who are visible, who do the work like nuestra hermana Khadija Rivera. May Allah raise her ranks in Jannah. We are following in her footsteps. We are, subhanAllah, so indebted to her as a community. And then there's those who are quiet, who are doing things quietly, right? SubhanAllah. And so it's really important for people to know that, one, hey, we exist, Latino Muslims exist. Latino Muslims have been here, right? You know, even uplifting Khadija Rivera, her family, right? Her children are second, you know, they're raised Muslim. You know, our children are also raised Muslim. That's like the next generation. So this reminder that yes, there are a number of us that are converts, pero también there's a lot of us that are not converts. And to accept us for who we are and understand that we all have different stories and different backgrounds, right? Because, you know, Latinidad is also incredibly diverse. And so it's been a beautiful journey, and you know, I'm grateful. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. I'm really happy hearing all of your stories. So a part of my studies is focused on this history, right? So, you know, this conversation that we're having, it's also serving another purpose, which is for me to really, you know, learn from the three of you about these experiences and bringing up things like this, like Khadija Rivera and other people, and you call them our ancestors, subhanAllah, and it's true. They came before us, they were our pioneers, and some of them we know, and then some of them we don't know, right? I'm learning, I'm discovering even people that go as far back as the 1920s or the 1930s, right? People who were involved in movements that when Islam was being introduced into communities like in Chicago and places like this, through movements that maybe were not Orthodox Islam, right? But there were these groups that were coming about, like the Moorish Science Temple, the NOI, of course, and you had Latinos that were able to go into these communities. The NOI, I know in the beginning they didn't accept Latinos, but eventually, you know, they did. But even in the Moorish Science Temple, they did accept Latinos. So there is just this whole hidden history, and I think one of the things I've realized that it's not just because it wasn't documented, but it was because of the way that Latinos have been identified and labeled in this country itself. Before, you know, the 1980s, or, you know, going back late 1970s, there wasn't such thing as a Hispanic. There wasn't such a thing as a Latino here in the US. We were known by whatever country we came from, right? Or even by the color of our skin, right? You had, you know, you were either a person who was Black or you were white. So all of these labels came about much later. And so I think that that's one of those things that has contributed to the way that we view the Latino community and the importance of the conversations that we're having now, so that people realize that this is not something that's new. This is something that we need to talk about, that we need to explore, and that we need to honor these people that came before us as well, inshallah. So I want to come back to Nahela, and I have a question for you. You've been involved in dawah work. You were talking about how you got started with learning, and then eventually it's evolved, and you've seen the growth, right? You've seen the growth of people around you. You yourself started in dawah work and then also convert support for so many years. How much progress do you think that we have made in terms of those two fields, in convert care and in dawah, since you started way back when until now?
Yeah, that's a very important question for all of us to kind of ponder upon. We still have a long way to go, right? And I think that's something that we should never be very comfortable, or we should never get comfortable, because sometimes we feel like, oh, you know, so-and-so masjid has had X amount of number of shahadas, or they have enough Latinos, and we get very comfortable. There's a statistic out there that it's 7 out of 10 converts end up leaving Islam. And that's very high. So when I hear this, it's heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for the dawah movement, and heartbreaking as a convert myself, right? Where did we fail these converts? What did we not fulfill? How are we not doing what we're supposed to be doing? One of the things that I have been navigating in terms of converts and the dawah care is the lack of human involvement, right? We are falling short because of technology, because we don't call each other anymore. We text. Like, we have to text before I call you. Like, I don't know, I'm almost 50, but yeah, that wasn't in my time. You call. You just call, you right? And today, why are you calling me? So that human touch is being lost. And so in the midst of that, we have a lot of well-intended individuals who are striving to follow Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's steps when it comes to convert care, but we're still falling short in many aspects, right? And so we do have organizations out there that are trying and striving and what have you, but I think we need it as a whole community, as you know, the individual that's cleaning the masjid, to the administrator, to the board. It's one ummah when we think about Islam, right? We're the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's not only for converts to do the work or for us to be out there giving dawah. It's a responsibility for every single Muslim. And so I have seen growth, absolutely, but these statistics are alarming, and this is something that we should all ponder about on, and we should try to do better, right? I always say the easy part is the shahada. Anyone can take shahada in 3 seconds. The hard work begins the day after the shahada, right? Who's going to take care of this individual? Do you know their ills, and do you know their hardship, and do you know if they have rent money and they have food on the table? Do you know if they learn how to pray, if they learn how to make wudu, if their kids have a coat for the winter? I mean, these are all things that to some people may seem minute, but to others may be what breaks them, right? Because each organization or house of worship treats their congregants differently, right? Sometimes in the church, you have a host waiting for you at the door, and they know when you don't come, and they'll call you. We don't have that. If you don't come for months, nobody knows. We label each other. Oh, we have the Ramadan converts that come only in Ramadan. And we start labeling each other, and we start again feeling comfortable with this. And so we need to be uncomfortable to be able to progress and do more of the work that needs to be done in order for this statistic to really change, inshallah.
Sure. You know, it's fascinating too that each generation is different too, because I think the older generation, maybe for them, it wasn't as necessary to have, you know, maybe gatherings or have someone hold your hand and kind of guide you through. But I feel like the newer generations that are, even though they're less connected in person, like you were saying about text over calls over, you know, actually getting together, but it also seems that they need more guidance. They need somebody to take them by the hand or to spoon feed them, like, here, this is what you need to do, right? I remember when I first accepted Islam, and this was in 2000, I had the youth coordinator at the masjid that helped me. He told me the next 2 years are going to be the most difficult. I mean, he's told right after the shahada, he said, okay, now it's going to get really hard for you. And I remember having to learn how to pray on my own. And we had VHS tapes back then. You know, you put it in your TV and you're holding onto your book, and you're praying and you're reading at the same time, and trying to listen and follow these videos. Now we have all this knowledge at our fingertips, but it seems that people still are like, well, I need someone to teach me. I need someone to guide. And that need for mentorship, I think, is really important. I'm going to just kind of like sidetrack a little bit on that mentorship, because I think it's something that we need to talk about. What do you think, Nahela? And then let's pass the baton and talk about spiritual guidance, mentorship. How necessary is it, not just for Latino community, but even for all of us, really?
Oh my goodness. I just had this conversation, and I feel that Bayan has lifted a veil for me, and mentorship is something that should have been done from day one. right? And so you're right. Some people are good by themselves, but most of us are individuals that need each other. I mean, we're the human race. We need each other. Allah created us into nations and tribes to get to know one another. So we definitely need of one another, and we need guidance. We absolutely need to sit at the feet of our scholars or a mentor that guides us and teaches us traditionally. And so we've lost a lot of that. As a matter of fact, I was speaking to someone this morning who's going through addiction, and they're two years into Islam. And I said, what you need is spiritual guidance, right? When you have heart disease, you go to the cardiologist. You don't go to the nephrologist. So it's going to take several things for you. You're going to need spiritual guidance, but you're also going to need mental health help, right? You may have a chemical imbalance. You don't know. You need to get diagnosed. You need to go to a psychiatrist and a psychologist, but you need that mentorship. I mean, you're 2 years in, you're literally a toddler, and I don't really know how much you do know. I mean, and so this is where the mentorship is crucial, because having someone that teaches you from A to Z, and when you have questions, right, to have someone to go to, it's so important, because learning off the internet, there's no shake Google. Absolutely not. We need to even take that term away, because people are actually infatuated with it. And they're like, oh, I got it. 40 hadith on there. I can do it. But you don't even know when this was revealed, how it was revealed, and that's why we need mentorship. I was recently at a conference, a 3-day conference, and subhanallah, a lot of the hadith I had learned, but the way the sheikh and the ustad like read it, I was just like back to like day one of my shahada. I was in tears. I was like, where have you been? I needed you. And so it's never too late to actually step aside and say, you know what? I need to look for these teachers. I need to sit at their footsteps. I need to make sure to take care of my soul, to take care of that spirituality. And a lot of times for us, that's one of the things that lacks. Lastly, and I'll pass the baton to Hazel. I recently also sat down with she's not even a year old Muslim, and she said something that really resonated with me and really touched me, right? She was a devout Christian. And she says, people treat me like I didn't know God. I had a relationship with God. I had a different type of relationship with God, and I had to change names. But I've always known there's one God, and I've had a relationship. So coming into Islam and you trying to teach me who God is, like, we had spirituality, we were singing, I had God in so many ways. I was driving and I was listening to different songs and what have you, and I had classes and sisters gatherings, and so I know God. So this notion that converts just learned about God when we convert, I think that's something that we also need to detach from. It's very important, because she felt very offended, and she's very well known. And so she's like, had I not been who I am, would I be treated the same way? That's another thing that like blew my mind. I was like, yeah, you're right. Yeah. So yeah, these are things that we don't really think about, how we're doing our dawah, how we're treating each other. But in essence, I think it's extremely important to sit with teachers, to find a mentor. And if you are not, if you're not compatible with your first mentor, go on to someone else. Find someone that fulfills those needs that you are looking for. Because I remember being paired up with a sister that I hardly understood her. I know she was well intended, but there was a language barrier. And so that took a lot of my interest away. So don't be shy. I mean, you can still stay friends with that first mentor and move on to someone that actually you can both benefit from each other. Hazel?
Yeah, subhanallah. That's so much, subhanallah, when it comes to mentorship and having that guidance and having it from day one is a blessing. And it's also this reminder that we have a lot of work to do. within not only the convert community, but also people who are raised Muslim. You know, subhanAllah, I really want to uplift something that you mentioned, Naila. It made me think of the stereotypes that people have about us. By you saying this sister, she knew God. It was a different way, but she knew God. And there is, unfortunately, among a lot of Muslims, there's this assumption, oh, you were, I'm going to say the K word, you were a kafir, right? So there's this assumption like everybody who is not Muslim, then you have no values and no morals and like all these things. And I often, for my own story, like I often remind people like, my grandparents raised a Muslim. They're not Muslim, and I pray that Allah guides them to Islam. Ameen, Ya Rab. But their values, they raised me, right? And that I really appreciate you saying that, because that's something that people who are raised Muslim really need to go back to that verse in the Quran in Surah Al-Hujurat. Allah made us into nations and tribes so that we get to know one another. And knowing one another means not having stereotypes about us, right? Like not having stereotypes just because we're Puerto Rican, that we're all like this, or we're Mexican, we're all like this, or Ecuatoriano, we're all like this, right? Like we have our own stories. And knowing that upon conversion, our sins are wiped clean, alhamdulillah, but not our stories and not who we are. We don't become this blank slate. Here, paint Hazel the way you want her to be a Muslim. Like that's not how it works, right? SubhanAllah. And so this idea of mentorship is really critical. And I realized many years later how blessed I was without realizing I had mentorship access. SubhanAllah, it hit me so many years later of like, whoa, I have access to these incredible people. But it goes back, it's this reminder, like this community during the time of the Prophet ﷺ was flourishing because it was heart to heart. It's always been heart to heart. And so, you know, even though we have the internet and we have the things, right? More access to knowledge, like you said, Wendy, right? Pero it's almost también, it's almost like Allah's reminding us of what our natural inclination is. Like, yeah, you have access to all these things, but the deen is passed heart to heart. Islam was spread heart to heart. The Prophet ﷺ paired people. It's heart to heart. That's how it grew. That's how it grew in Mecca. That's how it flourished in Medina. And so it's going back to those models that worked and contextualizing those models. Like it's totally fine to contextualize those models. And so even though when we convert and we're learning about other people, right, we're learning about, you know, a particular cultural practice or, you know, all these things, we get invited to like cultural parties or whatever, there should be a reciprocation of getting to know about us and who we are. Like I've been asked incredibly offensive questions. Like when I was in college and I met someone like, oh, you're in college? Aren't you Latina? Oh. Yeah. What? Oh, and that's the rated G version. Okay. I've been asked some terrible questions. And I'm sure I see the smiles on your faces. And I know those are smiles of but you know, subhanAllah, mentorship is important. And having each other is important, and being able to be real with ourselves on this journey. And I appreciate you saying that, Naila, that just because you find someone and you find a mentor and you're like, this isn't fulfilling what I need in my life at this moment, it's okay to find someone else. And know that mentorship is important. Like we need people to guide us by the hand as we continue on this journey, you know, journey towards Allah and journey towards following the footsteps of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I would love to pass the baton to Hermano Cesar.
Thank you very much. What is there to add to these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful reflections from both of you? But trying to connect what Naila and what Hazel have spoken about and shared with us. I remember when I embraced Islam, as I said before, in 2005. I think that everybody was asking me, everybody, my family, friends, everybody was asking me, why did you embrace Islam? And I have to admit that I struggled for over a year with finding an answer that would communicate all of my emotions, my feelings, my needs, my struggles, my voids, until I said, well, I don't have any answer. It was not that I was, God chose me to become Muslim. It was not a decision truly, it was not truly a decision that came, that it was God, was Allah who decided that I embrace the path of Islam. And I do remember years ago when I was conducting a class at a masjid in Baja California, and I was talking to a group of people who had embraced Islam recently, and I was telling them this story, this reflection of mine. I don't have an answer, and I said, but I do believe that if God chose me to become Muslim, it was, yes, of course, number one, for my own enhancement, my own progress, my own uh, growth and evolution. But it was because by being Muslim, I I would be able to share the fruits of that growth, that evolution in a very significant way with other people. And if God chose me to be a companion or a guide to other people, is because he saw some qualities in me before I embrace Islam. So this reinforces our belief that we as Hispanic, as Latin Americans, converts to Islam, we had a beautiful treasure, which is the cultural and religious traditions of our families, the societies where we grew up. Yes, we know about the values of companionship. We know the values of generosity, of taking care of our neighbors, taking care of our parents, or respecting our spouses, of giving the best to our children, of honesty, and so forth. And so we don't come from nothing, from darkness. We all have our own, we all have our own periods of darkness, and we continue to have. I continue to struggle with many things. I I I continue, of course, making mistakes, but but my need for God is truly stronger, and I want to share. I have an obligation to share that thirst with my brothers and sisters who were chosen by God to follow the path of Islam.
Mashallah, when you say it that way, it just it really uplifts all of us, right? When we start thinking of one another as people whom Allah chose, then we start to look past the pettiness, start looking past, silly things, mistakes that people make or things like that, and start to think of people as souls that Allah has favored, right? And since we're on this topic of mentorship, I had a question reserved for Cesar, and I'm going to make it now, because we are now in a position where we get to a point, right? We convert to Islam, and then we're the new Muslim, and we're learning. And I always remember this quote that Nahela said, you know, a few years back, where she said, "When do we graduate?" Well, we eventually graduate, right? We're learning, and you know, we're learning as we go, and then we start to age into these positions of being the ones that are mentoring, or being the ones that are teaching, or being the one, even if it's to our own children, right? It doesn't mean that we're in front of an audience and we have a classroom. It doesn't necessarily mean that, but we do evolve into these positions of leadership or or of mentorship. So Cesar, what are some of those challenges and opportunities that us as Latino Muslim students in Islamic leadership programs, which we're here in Bayan, where some of us are in this leadership track, what are the opportunities that we have now to become those better mentors, those better spiritual guides, and how can we bridge our Islamic and Hispanic heritage within this realm of religious studies?
Certainly, every challenge and difficulty is an opportunity for growth. But I have been able to identify 4 areas or 4 areas of conflict, if I may use that word, within Hispanic, Latin American Muslim communities. And those are related to leadership, to participation, education, and the role of women. And I believe that our Hispanic Latin American communities truly need mentors, leaders, both male and female, who know and respect our language, who know and respect our cultural and ethical traditions, who teach us the best of the Islamic tradition via the scholarship, the classical scholarship of Islam, and the modern scholarship that is so relevant to face the challenges of modernity. And I believe educational programs, formally established educational programas, pues, as the degree programs, the graduate degree programs that Bayan Islamic Graduate School offers in the areas of Islamic studies, Islamic leadership, Islamic education are central to connect the classical tradition with the modern contemporary knowledge that is so relevant, so practical, so tangible, and so much needed within our communities. Education certainly is. There are many voids in educational programs within Hispanic Latin American communities. Certainly, the role of women in leadership roles is we are not to where we should be, and the participation of Hispanic leaders within the general Muslim communities in the United States is certainly very, very limited, and we need to fill those voids, and what better way to prepare ourselves to fill those voids, to implement those changes, than by and through these educational programs that by the infinite grace of Allah are within our reach now.
No, I want to make an appeal also, the ones that the people who signed up and are here with us listening in to this webinar. It's also up to you to invite. You see that there are Latino Muslim leaders in Bayan, outside of Bayan. We are available, right? There are plenty of us that have the education, have the talent. I'm not going to include myself in there, but I'm saying overall, we are there all over, right? Hazel, where are you right now?
I'm in Detroit.
Nahela, where are you again?
I'm in Jersey, New Jersey.
I'm in Baltimore. Cesar, where are you?
California.
There you go. So you have us coast to coast. Literally, there are Latino Muslim leaders and both men and women who are in every state that you can imagine doing work. And like I think Hazel said, some of them are in the limelight. Some of them are, but many of them, I would say, probably the majority of them are behind the scenes, doing this Dawah work, doing what they can, whether that be grassroots work in their local communities, or if they're actually even internationally going back to their home countries, giving Dawah there, providing materials to the people that are living there. So there is really no excuse and for people to say, well, I don't know anybody Latino to come and speak at my masjid. I mean, there's really, all you have to do is just do a quick search or speak with Bayan, reach out to Bayan, and I'm sure that our administration, Cesar works at Bayan, we can connect you with those people that are close to you that can help in your communities. And now so we're almost at the top of the hour. So I want to make sure that we do get to the questions that we have from our audience. I wanted to bring it back to Nahela. And I think you touched a little bit on this, but I want to kind of bring it back. The Prophet ﷺ said that knowledge is obligatory upon every Muslim, and Cesar just said male and female is needed, right? How have your studies at Bayan helped you in your community work that you're doing so far?
Oh, where do I start? SubhanAllah. You know, it's with every class, every semester, every professor, my classmates, you know, roommates, just the whole experience, right? It has been life-changing. It has been transforming. Being able to network with individuals that I didn't know before, subhanAllah, learning their stories, learning the work they're doing, you know, the vast professors and individuals that Bayan brings to our lives. You know, I met Dr. Ingrid Mattson when I just converted, and she was the first person I ever interviewed, and I am not a journalist. And to be in her class, you know, it was like full circle. I was like, subhanAllah, here I am learning from a woman that once upon a time like tapped me on my shoulder and said, we're going to get through this, you know, and here I am again in her class. You're going to get through my class too. So Bayan has really been an institute that has changed my life in every way possible, from being able to really practice and implement what I learn, right? So I am now currently shifting. I've worn many hats throughout my conversion, from activism, humanitarian work, Dawah work, public speaking, traveling all over, you know, interfaith, you name it. Anything I can get my hands on, I was there. But today I am at a soup kitchen, right, on a weekly basis. And so to be able to implement what I have learned, to be able to implement like hadith and, you know, just the way our professors treat us and the way they carry themselves, and it has really been transformational. I can't even put it into words, to be honest with you. I'm going to tear up because it really has changed my life completely. And I am saying that wholly, wholeheartedly. that Bayan has really helped me lift a veil that I feel I was in a corner. Just so much has opened my heart, my mind, my willingness to learn. You get to a point where you're like stubborn and you think you know 5 hadiths and you're a scholar. Yeah, you don't know nothing when you come to Bayan. You're like, yeah, I don't know anything. Teach me. Um, so it does. It humbles you. It takes you back to zero. And I think for anybody watching this who think that they're too old, or yeah, I went back to school after 21 years. Okay. I was not planning to be in school at 50, but here I am, and I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful for the scholarship. I'm very grateful for everything that I have learned and where I'm at today. I'm only, like Cesara said, we're evolving creatures, we're growing. And so Bayan has been able to do that for me.
Inshallah. Yeah, so true. Everything. If we can do it, you can all do it. And I wanted to ask, this is the last question because I do want to turn it over to our audience so that you can all be part of the conversation too. And Hazel, I wanted to ask you, and this really goes along with what Nahida was saying. How are you juggling? Because you're a mom, so you're balancing these roles. You're a Muslim mother, you're also a convert, and you're also a student, but you're also a teacher, and you're Latina. MashaAllah, tabarakallah, may Allah bless you in your journey. How do you balance it, and what advice can you give those maybe women or mothers out there who think that they're not going to be able to handle, studying and doing everything else in their communities?
SubhanAllah, I co-sign everything Naila said. I'm like, sign, co-sign. SubhanAllah, because we live in this day and age where, alhamdulillah, there's access to free knowledge. And by free, I mean like YouTube. YouTube is great. I'm not knocking it. But when you have a curriculum that you are forced to go through and connect the pieces of our tradition, it makes a huge difference. And so Bayan has been incredible from a curriculum perspective, from a social perspective as well, to be able to room with sisters that I've known and like can finally like live with them for a week. Like that's suhbah, right? That's companionship. Because and then as women, right, to be mothers and wives, and being able to live together while we're studying just makes, subhanallah, it's so rich. And so to answer your question, listen, mama, I ain't got it. The advice I give is advice for myself. Subhanallah, it's incredibly difficult. What keeps me going is being Muslim, 21 plus years at this point. I've noticed the discourse be, oh, you're a woman, so the first thing you have to do is your relationship with other people, right? So if you're a wife, then first you take care of being a wife. If you're a mom, then you take care of being a mom. You are a daughter, take care of being a daughter. And all my years I've been like, where's Allah in that? Like, where's my relationship with Allah first? Because we're Ibad Rahman first. We are Muslimas first. And what I mean by that is when our connection and our relationship with Allah is being worked on, then the horizontal will also be worked on, right? And so, yes, have the intention to serve your family and let that be your ibadah. Yes, have the intention, but don't let that be the excuse to miss a fard. Don't let that be an excuse to miss a fard. I've heard it. And it's like, I hear you, sis. I hear you. I'm a mom. I know what that's like. But our relationship with Allah comes first. The first thing we're going to be asked about on the Day of Judgment is salah, right? And so I think that my journey of thirsting for knowledge has been, well, first, what is my relationship with God? And then, working on that as I work on my relationships with the people around me. And I have to say, subhanAllah, as I started on this path of studying traditionally with a sheikha, many years ago, subhanAllah, it was really beautiful when when I got my ijazah in the 40 hadith of Imam Nawawi. It was the best day of my life. Second best. First day was taking my shahada. I remember my husband, he didn't realize I was in earshot, but he went up to the sheikha and he said, Hazel studying here has changed our family. Because the point of learning is for it to be transformative. And I'm not saying, all I'm saying is I've been trying to implement, and I'm not being quite successful. But the fact that my husband recognized that me just trying to be just a little better, like Naila said, the way our teachers interact with us, so we're trying to emulate that, like that has an impact on the people around us when we have that intention. And as a mother, yo, they're sponges. Our kids are little mirrors of us. Son espejo. You want to see what you're doing? Look at your kid and they'll tell you what you got to work on, right? And so for me, it's been, subhanAllah, being a mom of 3 boys, mind you, and they're very rambunctious, mashallah. It's like, okay, this is what I have to work on because this kid has this little trait of mine. Then like, ooh, that's not pretty. Like I got, or there's this one and so it's been this journey of deep self-reflection and learning. And also, I remember learning that the zakat of learning is teaching. And so when I teach, it's for me. I tell my students, I'm like, whenever I teach, this is for me. This lesson is for me because I needed to hear it. And I'm just the conduit sharing it because I was told to teach this. So it's this reminder as well of, we are the Ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, and we are communities with one another. And then as Muslim women, I beg Muslim women so much who say, I can't do this, little by little, just little by little, one class at a time here, one class at a time here. Know that having the intention will be helpful for yourself and for your family and your children. Because when my husband said that to my teacher, and again, he didn't know I was in earshot, I was like, Ya Allah, please accept it from all of us. I'm trying, right? Like we're all trying. And so that's the beauty of studying and learning, is that we also learn the adab and the manners and the character that we should be embodying and striving to embody. And so, yeah, it's I'm grateful, and I'm grateful for the different roles that I have. But I also know that, subhanAllah, I'm easily replaceable. And the goal for me is like other Latino Muslims to take my role, just like take all the different roles so that we can continue growing as a community, so we can continue to have leadership from coast to coast and beyond, inshallah.
Inshallah, subhanAllah. And I just want to say what Hazel said, it applies to all of us. I'm over here. One beautiful thing about Bayan is that we all learn from each other. It's not just our professors that are teaching us, right? I'm over here literally taking notes of everything all of you have said, because I learned from you, even from your experiences, and it's a beautiful thing. And not just that, but we've given each other that support, just like you said, you can do it. I've had Nahela give me the pep talk. I've had Hazel give me a pep talk. Cesar has given me pep talks. And I think that we all need that, right? We all need someone to tell us you can do this and you're going to be able to get through, inshallah. So we're already past the hour, and I can't believe that this conversation went by so quickly. I wanted to just get to 3 questions that I have in the Q&A. And if anybody has a quick question they want to type up into the Q&A there, feel free to do so. And I want to start, Cesar, I want you to go ahead and take this one. The question is, what are some ways that Latino Muslim communities in the US can partner with and support their counterparts in Latin America? Are there opportunities to share resources, knowledge, or experience to help strengthen Muslim communities in the region?
Thank you so much. Absolutely. Absolutely. Resources that are available to Hispanic Muslim communities in the United States are much needed in other Muslim communities in the American continent, in Latin America, in Mexico, in Central America, in South America, and building these bridges of communication, of companionship, of sharing experiences and and knowledge es muy importante. I'm transitioning now to Spanish, pero es esencial. Es esencial estos lazos de comunicación con nuestros hermanos y hermanas en diferentes países del continente americano, de Latinoamérica. Las comunidades, la comunidad musulmana en los Estados Unidos ciertamente ha alcanzado niveles de desarrollo que no han alcanzado otras comunidades en Latinoamérica. Entonces hay mucho que compartir, hay mucho que enseñar, hay mucho que dar, hay mucho que aprender juntos. I don't know if there is a need to translate, but
I think we got it. But definitely there are opportunities. Reach out to the country where you want to go do the work. Reach out there to the local masajid or to the Muslims there and find out what it is that they need, and then go to organizations like ICNA, Why Islam, or others that are providing Spanish material. Gather that material, it's free. Take it with you to that country or send it, and at least provide some of those resources that are lacking. You would be surprised at some of the things that we have here that people in South America or in other parts of Latin America, they don't have. Even something as simple as a children's book. Something as simple as even a Quran in Spanish or a brochure. They don't have those things. Even though for us, we can get it easily at them. We can just go to the masjid and just grab it. So anything that you can do really is of value. I want to go ahead to the next question. Nahela, they wrote here, as Sister Nahela mentioned, we've noticed that there's been a growing interest in Islam, but also a significant number of people who've left the faith. And the numbers may be higher now, given that the data that you shared was from 2017. In light of this, what strategies is your organization implementing to ensure the well-being and spiritual growth of new converts? Are there any specific programs or initiatives in place to address potential challenges or concerns that new Muslims may face?
So, ironically, Embrace was born in 2017. And since then, or early on, I created a training program called Convert Sensitivity Training. And this training is geared for the community at large. It's really a 4-week program. We've concised it in a couple hours at a conference to kind of just give a glimpse of it. We recently did it here in New Jersey at a masjid over 4 hours, and then had to take the rest online on a Zoom call. People don't have the time or they don't make the time, or it's not a priority. So I think we need to shift mentally and make this a priority, right? If this is staggering and this is alarming, then we need to do something about it, and it begins with us. It begins on how important is this to us, right? We're not just Muslims on that one convert iftar during Ramadan. We're Muslims year round. And so we need to make sure that we understand the convert community year round, and that we are providing the services year round, and that we make ourselves accessible. And if there's any resources within your communities, to make sure that you know of them. That way, if you're not able to, as an institute or a masjid, you know where to direct someone that just came into Islam, so they don't go through the back door and end up leaving Islam because of lack of resources, lack of mentorship, and the list just goes on and on. So it's a responsibility upon every single one of us. And I think the shift begins with us. Something my husband said, when people don't call or people don't really look for you, it's because you're not on the top of their list. You're not their priority. And it was very difficult for me to digest that, because I have a lot of friends that I know they're busy and this and that, and I give 1,000 excuses. But no matter how busy we are, if so-and-so is coming into town and it's important to you and that relationship is important to you, you drop everything for that person and you go pick them up and you go and entertain because it's important to you. So how important is your convert community and your institutions and your masjids? And that's really where it takes us, right? Do you really consider us part of the ummah? Where are we? So it really begins questioning ourselves and making intentional and making it habitual, not just a yearly thing. So there are different programs out there. Again, this program I created, which actually Yaqeen Institute recently interviewed me, and I mentioned this, and the other point to this was the janaza, which I made a project out of it in one of my classes that we don't really think about, right? And so there's just so many components for a life of a convert that we don't think about, right? We don't have that family that's going to be praying for us or going to make those arrangements for us. So it becomes fard kifaya on the community. And so where are we with all of that? Do we have a reserve amount for converts when they pass away? What do we have for our convert community in our masajids and institutions? So again, I mean, I can talk about this forever because I am really passionate about it because I've been working in this field for now many, many years. And, you know, like I said, this morning I got a call from the UK. A brother is 2 years in and he's an addict, you know, and he doesn't even know where to go. And does God still love me? You know, so we're dealing with a lot. We're dealing with a lot, but I think at the end of the day, it begins with us.
Inshallah, definitely. Bi'idhnillah. May Allah uplift everyone, and especially in the work that you're doing, and may we be that light that those people need. But that beautiful thing that Cesar said, that we didn't come from darkness, right? Each of us carries a light with us, and we have to be that light for someone else. So we try our best to be a good example and follow the example of Prophet ﷺ in that regard. One last question that we had in the chat, and Hazel, I'm gonna pass it to you and then we'll bow out, inshallah. 20 years in, and I still feel the need for a mentor, and I totally feel that. So thank you so much for that question. People seem to be too busy and it's hard to find someone. What to do?
Bismillah, what to do? You know, when it comes to mentorship, make it a dua priority. Yes, there are people that are very busy. And if you reach out to someone and you feel like they could be your mentor, you can even ask them, do you suggest anyone who would really help me on my path? Just be upfront about it. You know, subhanallah, and make dua. Like, we all have different paths and we all have different journeys. And yeah, 20 years is subhanallah, but it wasn't meant for you to have that in your first year. And so it's more of like accepting the path that has been there for you. And now that you're like, oh, I really want a mentor, like, make it a priority. Like, make dua for it and then be active about it, right? And just be active and reach out to individuals, right? Like, there's those of us here on this call. What are you looking for in a mentor? Like, what do you feel like you need? And, you know, inshallah, we'll be more than happy to direct you to individuals who can, you know, really hold you by the hand on this journey, inshallah, because it's a beautiful journey. And know that Allah will show you when you're ready. You know, subhanallah, just make it a priority. Make it on your dua to-do list, inshallah.
Alhamdulillah. And as we wrap up, I hope that this conversation has inspired everyone that's here to reflect on the contributions of Latino Muslims in the US, the things that we still need to work on, right? As a community, both Latino and non-Latino, and also to think about supporting organizations like Bayan and because of the importance of that education and that mentorship factor that we all need. And we know from experience that this is something that is needed for these new generations of Muslims that are going to be here, taking our place, inshallah. And I want to ask Cesar, maybe you can take us out with a dua.
Yes, And I would like perhaps to read give voice to a passage from the Noble Quran, the Word of Allah, if I may, and in Spanish.
Adelante, por favor, bismillah.
Thank you. And this is from Surah Al-Ashab, and I'm sure everybody will recognize these words. Verdaderamente a los musulmanes y a las musulmanas, a los creyentes y a las creyentes, a los obedientes y a las obedientes, a los veraces y a las veraces, a los pacientes y a las pacientes, a los humildes y a las humildes, a los caritativos y a las caritativas, a los ayunantes y a las ayunantes, a los protectores de sus partes íntimas y a las protectoras de sus partes íntimas, a los pensadores de Dios y a las pensadoras de Dios. Dios les ha preparado un perdón y una enorme recompensa. And we see in this passage from the Noble Quran that Allah is highlighting the most essential virtues of the one who submits his life or her life to God, to Allah. Submission, faith, obedience, truthfulness, patience, humbleness, charity, devotion, morality, y entrega. You give yourself to others, and may Allah guide us in this path of giving ourselves to others and of preparing ourselves in the best manner through education, through work, through service to be better servants of Allah.
Mhm.
As Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, the one who serves humanity serves Allah. To serve Allah is to serve humanity.
Beautiful.
Muchas gracias.
I mean, Jazakumullahu khairan. Thank you so much for being with us, all of the panelists and all of you who are with us, watching us live. Thank you so much, and may the Almighty bless you and your families. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Que la paz sea con ustedes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.